So we've had great breakout sessions this week, lots of really animated discussion about technical topics. Obviously, I'm really keen on gaining clarity on detailed implementation decisions, and so lots of really great conversations and presentations. Right, as part of the breakout session, the follow-up is always to provide a presentation back to the developer group on the topics you covered, what decisions you made, and then there's an open conversation about that. Christian has been gracious enough to record everything, so all of this will be pushed up to the YouTube, right? Go to the RChain YouTube? Yeah, in about a week. He'll need some time to process all the videos and get them up there, but all the conversations will be available for your viewing pleasure later on. I can give a quick development status. We closed Sprint 5 last week. We are not actively in a sprint this week because obviously we're here at the developer retreat, and next week is Thanksgiving in the United States. So what the team is going to do is once we finish up the retreat, they all have tasks to document their understanding for each of their areas of responsibility and work on their project plans so we can go into Sprint 6 with a clear understanding of what it is we're going to build and get a lot of those questions clarified and answered. So very excited to be here with everyone. It's been really great meeting all the faces, putting faces to the names. Any questions? Yeah, make sure you unmute yourself so we can hear your question. Yeah, or mute when you're not talking. It might also be good to just type the questions into the chat. The devs are coming up the hill. They should be filing in. Yeah, so we have, I want to say 22 in total here, 19 core developers that are participating, and yours truly. So yeah, wonderful turnout. Very, very pleased. There's something in the chat. Christian, do we see any interesting questions in the chat? That'd be great.
Yes, Meta, I have a question.
Yes.
So, is it possible to give a clear timeline until the launch of RChain for what deadlines will be on the timeline and what will be accomplished?
Right. So we have an idea of what it is we need to achieve. We also have an idea of the timeline that Greg has already laid out for the investors and for the membership at large. With software engineering, there's what's called a cone of uncertainty. So it's really hard to say with definitive clarity that we're going to deliver X on this date. We're going to push as hard as we can to deliver as much as we can within the Mercury timeframe, but we don't have actual details in terms of fine-tuned estimates. What we have done is we have mapped out the project milestones into logical segments that we felt that those composite pieces of work belong together. My goal is that we will be tightening up those milestone criteria post-retreat and coming up with all the work items that need to be achieved in each milestone. From there, we will gain greater certainty of the time it takes to deliver as that milestone approaches completion. So it's kind of like, as you get closer, the point at which you're going to be done kind of converges. So it's really hard to put a date 9 to 12 months out in advance and have a lot of confidence in that date, if that makes sense. So a lot of people are here. I'm gonna turn the mic over to you, Greg.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can other team members get into the camera so people can see the team? The difficulty with this format is I guess I could stand like this.
It's a whiteboard.
Yeah, but it's not the whiteboard I want to see. I want to see the other participants in the call. That's the issue. Is there a computer that's logged in? Can we turn the? Can you turn your laptop this way? Okay, cool, awesome.
Does it need to be plugged in something, Christian, or can we put it on?
So yeah, please on this side of the camera. So yeah, so people can see some of the people who've been working. We've actually had some really invigorating discussions. I've been really excited. So the last discussion we had was about. So we were talking a lot about finality. And we were one of the things that was most fascinating about that discussion was essentially there are going to be two kinds of consensus failure modes that are unavoidable. Hey, Michael, come on this side of the camera. And I think there was a huge amount of weight from the team. And so the reason this is important is because ultimately we're going to have to commit code that commits to one of those options. Yep, commit to commit. That's right. And so it was quite interesting to see that there was a fairly high degree of consensus around which direction the code has to be committed. I would love if someone wants to give a summary of what those two options are and why. I would love. You want to try it? Go for it.
So, hello. Either you lose because basically people don't, the validators don't come to agreement, and basically there's progress stops happening, or you sort of get a network partition or whatever. You get independent decisions about what's going on, and so that's a sort of safety failure or whatever. And so either the code is going to have to make either one of those possible. It can't sort of prevent both of those situations. And so in one situation, basically the world turns into a hard fork, and in the other one, nothing ever happens. And so Vlad presented the argument that the biggest risk in the protocol is not a coalition, but a cartel of validators. And so the situation with if the cartel just wants to make everything halt, it's somewhat straightforward for them to do that, and that gives them a lot of power. And if whereas in the situation where there's a consensus failure, the safety failure, the cartels have less power. And so the argument was pretty strong that the code should allow the failure that involves a safety failure. I hope I got some of those words right.
I just want to clarify the two different the safety thing in particular. So, well, okay, so there's two failures that we're talking about. One of them is the validators go offline and we never finalize a new block, but we still have asynchronous consensus safety. The other idea is that in the case where the validators go offline and aren't finalizing a new block, nodes will subjectively finalize blocks using a synchrony assumption. Like, for example, if this block is in my fork choice rule for 2 weeks, then I will never revert it. And that will cause a consensus safety failure if the synchrony assumption doesn't hold, i.e. if two different nodes see different inconsistent blocks in their longest chain for 2 weeks. And it's much more difficult for a cartel to achieve that state because it requires the nodes not communicate with each other than for them to just do nothing and not produce any blocks. And so the cartel has less power if nodes use a synchrony assumption in order to make decisions in the event that the cartel isn't making finalized blocks. Then if nodes retain asynchronous safety, and therefore basically may have to wait indefinitely, or may never actually get a finalized block at all. So I don't know. Maybe that helps.
Well, I mean, part of what attracted me is that it puts the power back in the hands of the community, right? At the moment where you get a hard fork, the community can kind of go, well, I'm going this way, or I'm going this way, or I'm going that way. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable solution.
Yeah, because basically, when there's consensus safety failure, i.e., when correct nodes achieve irreconcilable differences in their opinions of the consensus, that becomes a governance problem to fix it. Whereas, like, if there's just a lack of finality on blocks, then it's a kind of, I mean, it still kind of becomes a governance problem, but it becomes a problem of, we basically need to replace the whole validator set, as opposed to a problem of choosing between like finalized forks.
Yeah, exactly. So moving along, I really want to introduce the team. I kind of want to introduce it in a functional way. Right after that, we talked about namespaces. I want to get into that and sort of the characters who seem to have some stake there. But I also want to talk about the Roland development work. We had some really nice presentations yesterday from Kyle. I'm going to come up and wave to the camera, and and Dan, who just presented for you, and they did some live coding. And what I'm hoping is to actually make it into a kind of live coding presentation, like literally on live coding, where we go through taking the basic cell example that's in the Roland spec, updating it to a modify version, updating it to a balanced version, updating it to an account version, so we can go through that. Other people who were involved in that discussion were Kent. Do we have Kent around? Oh. Okay, all right, very good. We also have some really nice clarifying comments from Aitan. Aitan, come and say hello. And we have Michael. Say a few words
about anything in particular. Hello, RChain community. I don't know. I'm a new developer on the team. I just joined last week, so I've been very excited to get to know everyone here and like talk about RChain and its vision and some of the really interesting like technical aspects and sort of how they're working towards goals to solve problems with existing blockchain solutions. And I'm really happy to be a part of it, and I feel like this is a great project. So I'm looking forward to interacting with other members of the community on things that they want to see as the platform becomes more mature, for sure. Yeah.
One of the things that's been so delightful is that, like, when did you say you first started looking at the Casper Lads? Last Tuesday, and already making insightful contributions. So this is the kind of team we've got. I think you've already met Griff. Want to come?
Hello, RChain community. We've been working on taking the framework of Casper that Vlad fleshed out in his Ethereum repo and extending it to RChain. And I, in particular, am working on the storage layer, and we've got that doing a kind of unification on keys, and we're currently exploring how to take what had been stored in the tuple space, and actually storing it in the storage layer. So that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. And on the other side, we have Lawrence and Ed, who've been doing a lot of work on clarifying some business requirements. You guys want to give a little chat?
Yeah, I was up earlier saying hi before the rest arrived, but yeah, on the business requirements side, we talked both about a number of verticals that were interesting. One of the most important things to do in the development community is to connect up why are we building RChain to real world problems that we're solving. So we talked about a number of them, and I believe it was Roland and Lawrence presented on supply chains, for example, in describing how supply chains, as they're currently centrally, I'm going to put some of my own spin on this, but as they're currently centrally managed, and they are about different suppliers, different parts, entities along the supply chain that don't necessarily fully trust each other, where every transfer of goods along the supply chains is a potential money event and liability event, and where over time we want to make supply chains more open, so that there's marketplaces for each point on the supply chain, And so there's interesting economics that align with blockchain really well. So we talked about that as a way to, not just a great use case, but as a way to give some concrete example to the development community. Lawrence, you want to add some things?
So as Ed said, we're talking to a lot of enterprises, large companies figuring out their use cases, very specific things, how we engage with them. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who are building things around RChain, or at least looking to see how they can do it. And also doing a lot of public speaking, sort of just to evangelize what we're doing. So hope to meet a lot of you as I go around the country in the future. Roland, do you want to come up and say a couple of words?
I'm Roland Waters, and I'm working with Holdings closely with Lawrence and Ed, and you've done a good week to understand who all is working on what, put faces to the names, understand competent, very competent, oh my God. So that's been great for me because there's a lot of people involved in this, and keeping faces and names is something I like to do, and it's difficult when you don't meet people in person. So that's been great. It's also been great because I don't actually come from a blockchain background. I come from a very network, not completely business oriented. I've actually spent time in the video game industry. So trying to do the transformations of words like trust, which Lawrence used, and people in the blockchain community have a specific definition of trust. And I think you said the people in the supply chain, they don't trust each other. I think that's what, or somebody said that. And that's not actually within the supply chain. That isn't really what the problem is. Everybody trusts their neighbors in the supply chain. They wouldn't be working with them if they didn't. But what they don't trust is any one player to hold the ledger. And so it is a trust issue, and it's also a power issue, and it fits within the overall model of decentralization. Although I don't know that if you tell them it's decentralization, they'll understand what you mean, because it's actually almost a re-centralization where everybody gets to participate as a peer on the blockchain. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to work out in terms of words and meanings and how you can convey the value to people who aren't fully embedded in the blockchain community.
Cool. So that gives folks a range of or a sense of the range of some of the things we've been talking about just in the last 2.5 days. 2.5 days. It's been pretty exciting. I've been very, very excited to be a part of this team and a part of this particular retreat. That's a big fire hose of information. So let me stop for a minute and see if there's any comments from the community.
When we defer to governance on a consensus, isn't there a trust relationship between nodes that supersedes community intervention?
So that's an interesting question. The issue there, though, is the nodes may find it economically advantageous to serve both sides of that fork. And the real issue, at least from an economic perspective, as I see it, is who wants to engage with either side of the hard consensus failure, right? So it doesn't seem to me, at least economically, determined by trust relationships amongst the nodes. Economically, it's, what advantage is it to the node to serve this fork or that fork or both? Can a miner mine both for Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, for example?
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the community trust, so to speak, as opposed to the economics. It's like, which fork do I go, which I go with? It's like, who do I trust to go with them?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I don't think that's going to be in terms of the nodes. Rather, it's going to be more like, who do I trust in the community, and I'll follow them. I think that's a much more that's more commensurate with my experience. But that's a great question. Anything else from the community? Awesome.
Can you maybe just rephrase the Casper issues one more time? I don't know if I was the only one who didn't quite catch it. I know it's really complicated, but if you could just summarize it in maybe one more time.
It's actually not that complicated. There are two failure modes. failure mode number one is the network doesn't make any progress in terms of finalized blocks. So if you are only looking at finalized blocks, something that you can really count on, there are no blocks being produced. So that's one failure mode. The network, from the perspective of generating finalized blocks, is producing nothing. So ground to a halt. The other is there's a hard fork, in the sense that some partition of the network believes, you know, these are the values that, or these are the blocks that are live or true, and another partition of the network believes that another chain of blocks are the real or the actual blocks, and so that's a hard fork of the network, and Vlad's argument is that from the perspective, again, to take a quick step back, we cannot avoid one of those failure modes. It's going to be one or the other that the code is committed to. And so now the question is, which of those failure modes do we permit in the code? And Vlad's argument is, if we analyze it from the point of view of cartels of validators, so in other words, Sony and Wells Fargo and I don't know, IBM get together and stand up a bunch of nodes, right? And they operate as a cartel. When does the cartel have more power than the community? Vlad's argument is that the cartel has more power than the community in the case when they can stop the network from making any blocks at all, because then they can just hose it and just say, okay, we're going to hold you for ransom. We're not making any more progress, unless you pay up this amount of money, right? GitHub says, sorry, we think you think your code is valuable. So that's a situation where it appears that the community can be held hostage. If you allow for a hard consensus failure, so there's a fork in the chain somewhere, then the community can decide, oh, I'm going to go to the left fork or the right fork, and then the validators can remain actually quite neutral. They end up having opportunities here. They can now serve both sides of that fork from an economic point of view, and the community gets to decide whether they participate in either side of that. Again, from a practical point of view, it's quite an interesting situation, right? Because we were thinking about it. It could be that on one fork, Elon Musk is worth billions and billions, and on the other fork, Elon Musk is a pauper, is worth nothing. And both forks are being served by different sets of validators, and are occupied by different and possibly even overlapping communities. So it's a very interesting world, and it's a world that we're seeing now, right? There are already blockchains that have forked and people engaging with both forks, right? So that's the argument. Shifting, did that answer your question?
Very much.
Awesome. So that's I'm glad we got we achieved some clarity. So just prior to the retreat, I wanted to say that Ian and I both attended the Platform Co-op conference, yeah, and I was just flabbergasted. I felt like, what was I thinking by not insisting that Ed and a bunch of other members of the team were there, because essentially the Platform Co-op is one of the huge, it's like every presentation, oh, that's a customer, oh, that's a customer, everything from, a fair B&B, a decentralized Airbnb that had some fairness to supporting different kinds of labor unions. Can you remember any of the other examples?
Utilities, like their power and water public utilities that are run as co-ops. There's one big movement towards taking over Twitter.
Yeah.
Turning Twitter into a co-op, buying out Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, exactly. So I just felt like there was like every single one of these presenters, and many of them, after they heard the panel that I presented on, they came up to me and said, "Hey, we would like to, collaborate with you." And one of the most notable ones was the group that was putting on the conference in the first place. So the Platform Co-op group at the New School in New York is interested in collaborating with us, and so we're going to see what's possible there. Hello, who's waiting?
All right, Joseph.
This is my buddy Joe Sufet.
I'll definitely get it done.
Hey, good afternoon. Privileged to be a part of this conference.
We'll talk. That's why I want to sit down with you and show you how I do business.
I think we paused. Okay, let me continue talking.
All right.
I didn't catch that. Did anyone else catch that?
I think another conversation got.
Type in the chat who that was and what if there was a question or comment. We'd love to see it. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. All right, no worries. Very, very good. That's fine. Oh, okay. So that reminded me. We also had the board meeting, first board meeting since the membership meeting yesterday, and have resolved a bunch of the issues. So let's see. Is there anyone here who wants to give a summary? Vlad, do you want to summarize what you remember the board meeting? Okay, so I think that the best thing is to look to GitHub. We'll be formalizing the language in the taking the interpretation, the results of the election, formalizing those in board resolutions, and placing those in GitHub. So if anyone has any questions before then, you know who to go to on Discord. But I think it's essentially what the one thing that might be salient to the community is that per the guidance that we got at the membership meeting from council, there will be a carve out on the $200 million in 28 or 200 million ROC in 2018 limitation for compensation. So not treating that as if it were a sale, and that's commensurate with what council's interpretation of that language. So if anyone has any questions about that decision by the board, again, please come back to us. Is there a question or a comment there?
Hi, Greg. This is Lisa. I just want to clarify. Can you hear me?
Yes, please do. Please.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that the carve out was for operating expenses of the co-op.
That's correct.
A little broader than just compensation related to employees.
That's exactly right. That's correct. Yeah, and again, that was commensurate with the guidance that we got from council. So again, if anyone has any questions at all about that, please, don't hesitate to come to us. Let's see. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was we also did some nice Meta led a very nice session today about community outreach. And so there were some really nice things that came out of that. Would you like to summarize what you took away from that?
I can. I mean, anyone in the room could do that, actually. It doesn't need to be me. Lawrence is like making waves. Hi. So yeah, I was tasked to talk about community development and how we wanted to, as a cooperative, interact with our community, what our philosophies were, how we felt we needed to work with the community as a development organization, and beyond that, right? How we were going to attract more members to the community, basically, and what are the traits? how we will operate, what our philosophy is. All of these kinds of topics is what we discussed. And I think one of the big takeaways we came away with, and acknowledgement also that this is hard, is that we want to be transparent and open and sharing, and even, I'm going to just put it out there, guys, vulnerable. Oh, this is definitely the feminine energy here in the room. Vulnerable with our community membership, and let them see how we're progressing on the project. What are some of the questions that we're struggling with? What are some of the things that maybe the code doesn't do today, right? And work with the community for solutions on problems, and be very open and give people an opportunity, of people of all kinds, to participate in the community, grow, develop, learn, make mistakes, and build a trust within each, within ourselves, and really embody that. And I think if we embody that, that will be magnetic, and I think we will draw people into us.
Well said. That was really well said. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
One of the things that came out for me that I was very excited about was identifying specific sub-communities. So over the course of this retreat, I've spoken to Christian and Ash and a bunch of others, and I want to throw it out to the community. I think based upon a lot of the data that I've read about the Burning Man community, I think we need to make Burning Man, make a connection with Burning Man for RChain. So if there's anyone out there who is a burner or has connections within Burning Man, there we go. We should, if anything they could do to help us and help craft the way we reach out to that kind of community. I was recounting something that I had read in a book that I recommend, actually, called Stealing Fire, where Larry and Sergey at Google were essentially at loggerheads, are unable to choose amongst some candidates for CEO, and what made Eric Schmidt stand out was the fact that he was a burner, was that his participation in Burning Man. And so that's kind of a signal for something that has become folklore within the tech community, that Burning Man really is a way to connect with the thought leadership in Silicon Valley. So that seems like one approach to reaching out to various communities. Does anyone else remember some of the other communities that we talked about? There's a platform cooperative community that we definitely want to make contact with. The gamers, gamers, and the infosec people. So, in the infrastructure developers. Yeah, NGOs. Very good. That was exactly. So that's some of the stuff that came out of those sessions. So again, let me stop there. That's a lot of information to take in. Is there any questions from the community? Yeah, exactly. Pirate Party of Sweden. That's very good. Yeah, absolutely. HJ, did you want to say anything more about the board meeting? I didn't see you because you're covered up. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the summary of the board meeting?
All people were present from the boards. That was great, and Lisa was also present. And the thing what was astonishing was that all decisions were unanimously taken, and it was a nice mood to clarify a lot of things. So that's what I want to say about the board meeting.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. Yeah, I'd forgotten to mention that there was just so much consensus on the board. I was delighted, and I was delighted by the process. We took the time to educate each other on a variety of issues, from some of the tax implications of decisions to how we value contracts with the employees, to the issues with respect to carve-out. So I was very delighted by the process. All right, let's see. Is there anything else we really want to cover? We have so much work in front of us. I would love to yield the time back to the developer retreat, but I want to make sure, is there anything else we want to cover? Is there anything we want to get out of this community hangout?
I would like to, Patrick or maybe give us just announce the activities of the governance committee and some of the other committees which have been set up in GitHub. And Patrick set up a spreadsheet of member team roles, which I think is very useful. And a number of people have been in here self-organizing the cooperative in terms of the board, which everyone seems really happy with the board, you know, and they're obviously doing a great job. The other committees, we have a channel set up in Discord to participate in. And then we've outlined here, it hasn't been filled in, but we're trying to identify the people involved in the different areas. If you can help with the spreadsheet, it would be most appreciated so that we know what we're governing. And then we get into projects, which is including the community and the projects. Well, first of all, the RChain specific efforts that are part of there. And then the holdings company, Lively Gig, and I don't know any other major activities, cooperations that we want members to cooperate in. And other projects which are targeted, that members belong to, that are targeted for RChain and cooperation with RChain. I stuck Pyrofex in here. I'm not sure where that fits in, but we can add relationships here with our other communities where we have some kind of deliverable or action that involves participants from both projects that links the sociocratic circles, so to speak. But once we get this structure laid out and the links between them, which enable the collective intelligence as a whole, well, that's one of our objectives. But we're meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. New York time.
Awesome, Jim. Thank you very much. One thing Ed brought to my attention, and I didn't see it up on your sheet, and I would really like to acknowledge the work of Navneet and Ian and Bronco on the membership site. It really has come together, and I really appreciate the work there.
We
have recorded all the sessions. They will be available in coming days, and then you can review. And you know, some of the things what we discussed here, and you will, community member will be filled in, and then what we ask them to participate more in terms of how we can go or evangelize RChain more further down to more people. You know, there are so many members, they are doing excellent job promoting RChain, but I think we need to expand our horizon, and our marketing team is diligently working on that one. So probably there will be a better plan in coming weeks, will be shared with the community members, and then how to promote RChain and what all things we can do with RChain. Basically, we'll share vertical and horizontal solutions with you guys, and then what we want to do, take them and evangelize with the rest of the community or blockchain community. Yeah.
Thank you. And just as a follow-on, one of the things that was really nice is, Ian, the session we did with Martin, was that did that come in through the membership site? Oh, yeah. So as an example of this, of the memberships that working, Martin Lundfall, who is a type theorist and is working on adding dependent types to linear types. We've been meeting at DevCons and various places, but he was also at the Platform Co-op, and I think that's how he came to become a member of RChain. Is that right?
So there are channels opening up on many platforms now for RChain. So I just saw something in the Zoom chat that the new Telegram channel has about 100 members now, and so those members are on Telegram. They're welcome to. I'm sorry, they're welcome also to join the RChain membership and participate on our Discord. And the Discord is a place where members can collaborate and also have better access to the developers and to the leadership of the co-op. So we'll be posting more places where you can find it, but if you go to slack.rchain.coop, oh, good. Yeah, that'll give you an invitation to the to both how you can get to the public channels as well as the channels that are only accessible to members. Right.
This is very exciting. So just to continue on with that story, so Martin did his KYC session with Ian, and it was just by accident I happened to sit next to Ian at the table. I didn't know that he was doing KYC with Martin, and then Martin pops up. And when we had a very nice conversation about follow-up on possibly adding dependent types to the Rowline type system, so that was very exciting. And these are the kinds of synchronicities that I think are going to happen more and more and more as we move forward.